both audit and scrutiny committees in these new authorities. But I recognise my noble Lord's interest and experience in London governance matters, and I would be pleased, as I say, to engage with him not only on his first amendments, but also on these amendments. Perhaps we might review the operation of London's devolution settlement separately to this House's consideration of this bill. And I would ask my noble friend to withdraw his amendments at this time.
My Lords, I am very grateful for what was a very valuable debate. If I could briefly go through those who spoke, the noble Lord Tope, put his finger on it by saying that really this is a question that won't go away, I think, about the balance of powers in areas which have strong regional government, combined authorities, metropolitan mayors and so forth, with the local councils, the constituent councils. And as my noble friend the Minister made clear, those arrangements differ in different parts of the country. But we have to learn lessons from them and apply those lessons in an evolving way to existing structures. We can't just dig our heels in and say that what was good in 1999 is good forever. We have to be able to improve things, and he understood that. On the question of subsection 2, I had a strong sense, listening to the noble Lord, that we were actually in violent agreement, but I'm going to speak to him afterwards to discover if there is a difference between us and to see what can be done to reconcile our understanding of this boundary issue. The noble Baroness, Lady Bennet of Manor Castle, I was very grateful for her support. I just want to give some credit to the Green Party here as an example of what could be achieved by a more democratic scrutiny of the Mayor's budget, because only a few weeks ago, in consideration of the Mayor's budget, the Green Party put forward an amendment in the Assembly that would have required the Mayor to introduce lavatories at up to 70, costed amendment, that would have required the Mayor to introduce lavatories at 70 London stations. It got a majority in the London Assembly. It was supported by the Conservatives, it was supported by the Liberal Democrats. Of course it fell. Having a majority is not enough in this sort of democracy. There's something very strange about that. But I'm grateful to the noble Baroness for her support. The noble Baroness Lady Fox of Buckley was right to point out that the weakness of process and the rushing of air quality measures is provoking a backlash and cynicism amongst the voters. She also expressed very well the genuine and real suffering of those who are facing the prospect of the current proposal for a ULEZ scheme in London. I have to be honest, my Lords, what I expect if this amendment is passed is not that boroughs would actually block a mayoral scheme to introduce a ULEZ, but they would moderate it, because they too are interested, and so are local people, in better air quality. But they would moderate it, they would have their say, so it would be introduced more slowly, in a way that was more manageable, with more local consensus, and with better support for those who are in need of making what can be a very expensive transition. If I come to the noble Baroness Lady Pinnock, she drew on a very long experience of local government, again to put her finger on the question of the democratic deficit. The noble Baroness Lady Hayman of Ulloch made it abundantly clear that the Labour Party stands full square behind the Labour Mayor's proposal to impose a ULEZ on outer London. There was not one word of criticism. Now, she mentioned the estimate of 4,000 premature deaths in London. And I do not dispute that figure. It's difficult to know what it means. Is a premature death 10 years before you would have died, or a week before you would have died? These are difficult figures to interpret, but that figure I regard as reliable. I'm not disputing it in any way. But what I want to point out is that when I was Deputy Chairman of Transport for London, a post which came to an end in 2016, when I was on the board of Transport for London, the figure was also 4,000. The measures are introduced, the local traffic neighbourhoods are introduced, the ULEZs are introduced, but the figure, the estimate, never actually changes. So is it really doing any good? And when the noble Baroness has to point out what good it's doing, she doesn't say that figure of 4,000 is coming down. Instead, she turns, with a very clever shift, she turns to the measurement of air quality and the number of schools passed and so on. But the question is outcomes, not outputs. The question is it having that health effect? And the figures, the estimate, is amazingly stubborn. I would just say that. There is a balancing issue. The noble Baroness made a point about boundaries and the possibility of a Swiss cheese type of scheme and boundary issues. And she has a point there, although I think it's perfectly manageable. I think if Bromley or Kingston resiled from the scheme, you just draw the boundary somewhere else until they're persuaded to come on board. I think it's quite manageable. But the point I want to make to her is that there is also a glaring boundary issue between the Greater London area and the surrounding counties. And those people in the surrounding counties are also affected because they won't be able to get to their customary shops, their places of work, and there is no and their relations, often their immobile and elderly relations, as we heard. But that boundary causes her no difficulty at all. A boundary between London and Surrey causes her no difficulty, but a boundary between Kingston, say, and the rest of Greater London is something that she feels is a block to the whole scheme. And I think we need to be a little bit more honest about the fact that all of these schemes have hard edges, and there are always going to be sufferers, which is why time and consensus are so important. If I turn then briefly to my noble friend, I was, of course, disappointed to hear her defend the status quo so resolutely, but greatly encouraged by the fact that she's willing to meet and discuss, prior to report stage, willing to meet and discuss both of these issues with noble lords who've spoken and taken an interest. So I thank her for that, and I look forward to those discussions. In the meantime, with the leave of the House, I beg leave to withdraw my amendment.